Hello everyone and welcome to vakilaw. I am Shivani and today we are discussing the later part of intellectual property rights. So we are now, as I said, we are discussing about the subject of intellectual property rights. So in my last video I have discussed a backdrop of the intellectual property rights and the meaning and definition and the concept of intellectual property and intellectual property rights. So now we are all well versed that intellectual property is nothing but a creation of intellect, and intellect here refers to the human mind. Now we shall discuss about what are intellectual property laws. So now it's very obvious that intellectual property laws are the laws which govern the intellectual property or the concept of intellectual property or anything that refers to intellectual property. Okay, so now let us discuss what are intellectual property laws. So it's very obvious that intellectual property laws are the laws which are related to intellectual property. So anything which provides for protection against infringement of intellectual property. So these provisions, the laws which provide and govern these provisions are the intellectual property laws. So these laws provide the owner of such intellectual property the exclusive use of the intellectual property that he owns at his own desire, and it also prevents other people from using it without the prior permission of the owner of such intellectual property. Now this point can be understood in two parts. So basically the intellectual property rights provide the owner of such intellectual property the exclusive use, that is, that person is eligible to exclusively use the property that is of his ownership or is in his possession, which is at his own desire, that is, he himself wishes to keep and use that intellectual property. And at the same time, on the other side, we see that it also prevents other people who are not owners of such intellectual property from using such intellectual property without prior permission of the owner. So if the owner does not allow the use of such intellectual property, any other person except the exclusive owner is prohibited from using such intellectual property, and if he does so, he shall be punishable by law. So as I have stated earlier, in my earlier video also I have stated that intellectual property right is an intangible right. So what is intangible? One that cannot be seen, heard or sensed or touched by the human body, which is exercisable in respect of tangible work. So it is an intangible right which cannot be seen or felt or heard, against what? A tangible work which can be seen. So the right cannot be seen, but the work can certainly be seen. So the next point is that intellectual property is treated as a movable property. Movable properties which can be transported from one place to another place, which can be assigned and transferred to any other person. So it is a movable property and it can be assigned or transferred to any other person at the wish and will of the owner of such intellectual property, is what has been stated. Okay, so now let us discuss about the characteristics of intellectual property rights. So I'll give you a brief summary of the characteristics. You can see those points on your screen. First, intellectual property is a creation of human mind. Second, intellectual property right is an intangible right over a tangible work. Third, intellectual property right is assignable and transferable as it is considered to be a movable property. Fourth, the owner of intellectual property is the exclusive and absolute owner of the property. So no other person can claim for ownership or copying or use of such intellectual property except the exclusive owner or possessor of such intellectual property. And intellectual property rights are legal rights, which means it exists only under law. So here I have discussed about the characteristics and the intellectual property laws. I hope you've understood them. So in my later video, I'll be discussing about the growth, scope and role of intellectual property. See you in my next video. Till then, goodbye and good day.